Hello, welcome to the weekly economic snapshot. Today I'm joined by Matthew Schniper, who writes Side Dish. Matthew, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Appreciate it.
So for those who aren't familiar, tell us a little bit about Side Dish.
Sure. It's a free weekly food and drink newsletter that I write, direct mailed to my subscribers. There is a paid option for some perks just to support the work. It's really a continuation of my long-term journalism career. I was at the Colorado Springs Independent for almost 20 years under the prior ownership. There was, as you know, in media, I was downsized and then laid off. The newsrooms have been hurting. So I started my own Substack the following week, and I report on food news, food happenings, food events, stories from inside the industry, some occasional travel or think pieces. And I believe I might be the Springs' only full-time working food and drink journalist right now.
So one of the things I really enjoy about reading Side Dish is that you're not just giving us information about restaurants and what they're serving, which I love to have that information, but you're also really chronicling the industry. One of the things that's gotten a lot of attention in the last several months has been, it seems like there's been a bit of a wave of restaurant closures. And I was curious if you were seeing any common themes in the restaurants that are struggling.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, you're right. There's been, I think, over probably around 24 places in the last calendar year that the lists have been put together locally to talk about some of these. Good news is a couple of them are getting revived through new ownership, so there will be some stories coming up I'll be talking about. But yes, the common themes are really related to, everyone knows about inflation right now. There's rising rents. Sometimes that's greedy landlords, and sometimes that's just the marketplace around it. Still have post-COVID readjustments in the marketplace. A lot of competition from chain and the fast casual models coming in and putting pressure on the mom and pops. Also on the staffing side, I'm in touch with the Colorado Restaurant Association a lot, and we're talking a lot about things like how the tip minimum wage came in several years ago, and that just changed a lot of the dynamic. There's minimum wage increases now every year or so tied to the consumer index rise, and that's putting pressure on them on the staffing side, and including having to offer FMLA, sick plans, retirement account access. So that whole model has shifted. And so if it's not a challenge over here, it's a challenge over there. You put them all together, it's a cocktail of effects that have just put so much pressure on them that it's always been a slim margin, razor's edge business, and now so more than ever.
Do you think we're seeing more closures and more struggles than usual lately?
I think so. I think in this last year, I definitely reported on more than I have in an average year. Even, I would say, probably dating back to since right when COVID hit, and there was that initial wave of closures right around that spring 2020 time where some just said, forget it, I'm out, I'm not going to deal with this. I'd say it's probably our worst year since then, and this, I don't have specific numbers, but off the cuff, after watching this for about 20 years, I would say yes, definitely.
One of the things you mentioned were staffing pressures. How are workers doing? Are workers seeing some upsides?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I was going to say that might be one silver lining is I'd say the pay on the worker side might be better than ever. Front of the house are making sometimes more than ownership. When I talk to chefs, they're like, man, my bartender makes more than me. That server over there who has the Friday night shifts walks away with $300. You've got, when I was in the industry in the late 90s, I made about $2.13 an hour plus tips. It was not great. So you had a slow night, you left with no money. Now that minimum wage is around $12 almost. I think it's $11.79 in 2025. So you have a bad night, you're still walking with $12 an hour. You didn't have a totally disastrous shift. The problem now is with parity between front and back of the house. Line cooks are still getting paid better. Back again in the late 90s when I was in the industry, I made $6.17 an hour or something, just poverty level. Now I think most places are paying competitively close to $20 an hour. So I'm not saying it's the best for a long-term career, but it's at least a dignified entry point to learn the skills and rise up. But the problem now is that parity between front and back of the house, and restaurants are trying to constantly solve that with those extra tip lines you sometimes see for tipping the staff, tipping the back of the house legally. That's a challenge, and the Restaurant Association is still working on that as we speak, trying to advocate at the state level, see if we can get some laws changed around, because the model is still broken, and we had hoped that after COVID it would be built back better, and unfortunately it wasn't. So here we are.
So when you say front of the house, you mean like wait staff, people like that, and back of the house are the cooks and dishwashers?
Yes, typically, yeah. Front of the house is definitely your bartender, your server, and back of the house is your line cook, your dishwasher, maybe prep cook, sous chef, some other positions as well. But there's just that line culturally in restaurants. We joke about the front and back of the house. There's the divisions. It's almost like the Romeo and Juliet story. Sometimes you have a dating situation between front and the back of the house, and it's almost controversial, right? So we like to joke about it, but honestly, when it comes down to the economic side, it's not fair that all these people show up into one building and this half leaves with all the money or most of the money, and this half works equally, if not more hard jobs, difficult, sweating under those hoods, over the fires, doing creative work. And I'd love to see that. I think we all want to see that equity inside of restaurants.
So we've talked about some of the restaurants struggling and some of the restaurant closures, but the restaurants that are doing well, what are you seeing from them? Are there any common themes in that?
Sure. I think some of these operators pivoted early and were sensible about what people wanted, and really moving toward affordable price points early side, positioning themselves to take advantage of just some of the trends. And I hate to say it's homogenized some things. We have a million tacos and pizzas and burgers and only a few of these or a few of those. I talked to a chef a couple of days ago and I asked him, he told me his numbers were phenomenal. He was having one of his best weeks and best days ever. And I just was, wow, man, that's so cool. Good for you. I'm talking to so many people struggling. How are you doing it? And he just said, meet people where they are, provide consistent product, invest in service, keep working to improve the space, find great employees and support them every shift. So there's that management side and ethos side of how to treat people, but also the way he designed his menu, the products he's offering in this marketplace here and now. People are skeptical of the $15 burger. Well, now all the burgers are costing $15. Back in the day, the $15 burger came with foie gras on top of it or something to justify that price. Now the $15 burger is maybe your sad, miserable burger that's nothing special, and the special one's over $20. And the burger doesn't mean anything anymore, right? Like we've almost lost that whole Big Mac or latte index on it. Like what is $5 worth? Hard to say. So I think the places that are succeeding have just been working on cracking that code. And as he said, meet people where they are, give them what they want. Don't be stuffy and say, well, this is the way chef wants it and this is the way he serves it, no substitutions. That might not be the best time for that right now, unless you're in the highest level, finest dining settings. And then we're talking about a whole different demographic of eater who doesn't care about the price point. But we're talking about the largest section of diners right now who are very budget conscious, because we all have to be. Make sure you're giving them good value, most of all.
Well, and I would imagine that the skills to be a great chef and the skills to be a good manager are a very different set of skills. I'd imagine it's tough to bring those together.
I think you're right. And some brilliant chefs have failed when it came to opening their own place if they didn't have a great investor or GM or someone else on that money side to run the business side for them. There's a handful of operators in this town that are chef/owner that are that kind of double threat or maybe even triple threat, because some of them are also musicians or artists or something else. They're the multi-talent, but a lot of them need that other side support to figure out everything else that's outside of just the costing and inventory of how to put that menu together. But, running the appropriate staffing, all the other factors, negotiating a good rent in a good spot. If you come in right off the bat and you don't negotiate a good rent and you're on an overpriced block and you overpay and your margins aren't right to ever recoup that, you're dead in the water before you know it. So there is so much to it. When I was in the industry, I never wanted to open one of these. People have asked me like, hey, you know a lot about this, you should open a restaurant. No, I shouldn't. Absolutely not. I admire the people doing it because it is a very tough industry.
Yeah, I really appreciate a lot of the great restaurants we have in town, but I also take my hats off to the people who are actually running them, because it's a really challenging business.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate the work you do. I enjoy reading your newsletter and learning about what's going on in Colorado Springs. For those who are watching who are interested in learning more or signing up, where should they go?
I tell everyone just Google Side Dish Schniper, SCHNIPER, or Side Dish with Schniper, Side Dish Colorado Springs. I will come up pretty quickly in your search engine for you. I've got a Facebook page and Instagram. It's free to sign up, like I said. So please do. I'd be happy to send you that weekly email and keep you in the know of all all the food and drink places. I am easy to find online, so just look for my little sticker around town too. I've got my little hat and everything. So if you're at a cool place and you see any association with Side Dish, it's sort of been vouched for by me. I do have a sponsorship group who helps do some of my work. So you'll see I do some events monthly around town. So I'd love to have you at one of those as well. So just tune in on my page. All the details are there.
Highly recommended. Matthew Schniper, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.